Hi everybody, my name is Jerry Wise, and this program is entitled Healing from Your Narcissist System. And I've been a life and relationship coach for over 40 years. I've been helping people in many ways over these many years. Now I do life and relationship coaching. I use a family systems approach to helping people learn to self-differentiate. I also work with ACOAs, adult children of alcoholics, adult children of narcissists, and many family problems and many individual problems that I've worked with over the many years. And again, this program is entitled Healing from Your Narcissist System. What I want to do in this program is to broaden your scope and to zoom out regarding narcissistic relationships. In using a family systems approach, I think it's very important that we take from family systems the ability and the theory to zoom out to see our relationships in context. And what that really means is our relationships as we zoom out and include our family of origin at present, our family of origin in the past, and our current functioning in the present. And as we zoom out to see all of that, the narcissistic relationships that we have been in make a lot more sense. It also gives us the guidance and paths to exit a relationship with a narcissist and to heal and recover from narcissism and its abuse. There are many good books out there about healing from narcissistic relationships, offering some of the steps you can take to recover. They focus on your pain and you and your patterns with the narcissist. But they actually keep a rather zoomed in approach rather than a zoomed out approach. They're helpful, they can be useful, and I think they are ones that can be help us to recover. I have used those in my own recovery from narcissistic relationships, and they really do give us some what is normal, what should you expect, those type of dynamics, which is very important for us. Today, I'd like to take a family systems approach and a zoomed out approach to narcissistic relationships. I want to use this family systems model to help those of us who have suffered painfully and who are in narcissistic relationships. Maybe you're in a narcissistic relationship right now, or maybe you've been able to get away from a toxic relationship and you're in the process of healing and recovery. The key point, one of the key points I want to make today is that a narcissistic relationship fits into a larger picture of our emotional landscape, or what we might say in family systems world, our emotional field. This awareness can help us out of a narcissistic relationship and can help us to recover. I and my associates train clients every day to look at a larger picture of their emotional life. It gives them more insight, more awareness. It shows them better the lay of the land and the map they're using to navigate problems and to head towards a healthier future. But if that map is incomplete, if their GPS is broken, if they don't see a broader perspective, then we will end up hitting our shin on the table. We will end up falling into potholes. We will end up tripping over things that we don't see. And that's why I think the more we see, the more we can recover and the faster. I urge those that I have worked with to take I've urged them to take in their life their family of origin life growing up, and current functioning in their family of origin at present. Take in all of that information as you're making decisions and as you're healing and as you're recovering. The benefits provide more objectivity, less self-blame, less naivety, or we might also say observational blindness. It provides more awareness and greater understanding for ourselves. Anything that does that, I'm for. And I think for example, a Bowen Family Systems approach is one that can provide much more help in that area, as it has for me. Seeing our lives from a bird's eye view, a bird's eye perspective, can really give us greater knowledge of ourselves and others, and give us paths towards a greater maturity, healing, and strength. One of the questions that I ask, and this is always a direction I always like to go, how does being in a narcissistic relationship fit into your family system at work within you presently? Now let me repeat that. How does being in a narcissistic relationship, or having been in a narcissistic relationship, fit into your family system at work within you? And I want to break that down just a little bit. In fact, let me use an example of Jeannie, who's a 50-year-old nurse, and she was raised by a narcissistic mother. She's married to a husband who's also a narcissist, or at least has many narcissistic traits. She continued to try to heal her relationship with her mother with hope and holding on to the fantasy of having the mother she always wanted. She continued to try to be good enough to change mom, to have mom get some insight, to perfect mom, to help mom heal, so that she could have what she always wanted and needed. Similarly, we stay fused to our narcissistic relationship as adults and to those toxic relationships to try to get that fantasy fulfilled. So it begins in childhood. Into adulthood, we continue to try to make that fantasy be fulfilled and to get the love, acceptance, caring that we've always wanted. And so we will fuse on to a narcissist who will reenact, and we will reenact what I had in my family of origin. And actually what I may be doing now as adult with my family of origin still. So it's not only the past functioning, it's the present functioning, and then how it fuses me to a narcissistic relationship. And I think thinking of it in those terms, I think there's much more chance of freeing yourself from that. Because if we can free ourselves from our original fantasy, pain, dreams, trauma, and abuse, then we are much less likely to fuse and to continue that pattern with an adult relationship who reenacts what I had many years ago and what I may currently be having now. Jeannie would take mistreatment, put downs, rejection from her mother just to win her over. And again, she would just accept all of that, hoping she would then get out of her role as the scapegoat or all of the role that she's been playing in her family. Her siblings were also caught up in this narcissistic family cycle, and they would reject and become intolerant of Jeannie, believing the role Jeannie has played in her early in her life as the one who is oversensitive, over-complaining, difficult, and as one who just can't get over things. Of course, in her marriage, she would hear the same things from her husband, who is a narcissist. Well, you're just oversensitive. you just complain too much. You're just difficult. And you're just one who just can't get over things, besides other kinds of mistreatment that we can get from narcissists. But there is that similar theme playing out again in our adult relationships. Now, her husband, again, would state those kinds of things that she had from growing up and in her present adult relationship and how her family operates within her as an adult. And he would say those type of things and accuse her of all the things that would just mirror what had happened to her when she was younger and as an adult. While her husband himself was unaware of how his behavior and his lack of feelings affected her and lack of empathy. He would become defensive and lack that empathy when she would suggest they work on their marriage. Well, of course, there's no reason to work on the marriage because you're the one with the problem, not me. Much like in her family of origin growing up and her adult relationship family of origin pattern, in which the family was still doing the same ostracizing of her and painting her in such a negative light. And so now Jeannie is caught in the double vice of the family of origin dynamics and marital relational dynamics of narcissism. She's caught growing up, caught as an adult with her family currently, and now caught in her relationship with a narcissist. And of course, she was miserable. She could not see her way clear, could not see her way out, and could not change enough to make people change or to be happy with her. She continually blamed herself for not being healthy enough, emotionally stronger, kind enough, Christian enough, tough enough, and all those other enoughs that are there. And as Jeannie began her work with me, she began to see more clearly her role growing up as a child and how clear that became and how much pain there was there that she could begin to heal and let go of and process through. So first she began to, let's start with the first vice in which we're caught in a vice. Let's start with the first vice, our family of origin growing up. And then we looked at how is it repeated in her adult life? How is she dealing with her family of origin now? And actually we saw a lot of the same dynamics were happening now as they were when she was 10 and now she's 50. But the family still operates in the same way. And it would operate in her the same way. And then we take a look at how is it operating in her marriage now. And then we would see all of the dynamics in all three vices that we were caught in. And so if we can begin to loosen that vice through healing and recovery, dealing with our pain, dealing with our beliefs, dealing with all of those, that inward work, then we begin to find that loosens up, adult relationship with family of origin loosens up, family of origin of childhood loosens up, and then we loosen up the relationship with the narcissist because we're not caught in this vice and this where we can't get out. We are caught in this situation that we cannot free ourselves. She also began to see more and more how her family of origin was still at work in her, that the family was still in there. Even though she doesn't live in the family, she has her own family, her own kids, grandkids, but the family of origin was still very alive in her. She would go to work, and if there was anything that would trigger her, like when she grew up, she would also have these triggering and reactivity. And so her family was still at work in her. Her family of origin was still creating systems feelings of shame, guilt, rejection, and abandonment. I would recommend you watch my video on systems feelings versus true feelings, because those systems feelings were imprinted long ago, and now they are there to keep us in the same role, to have us functioning in the same way in the family, because those feelings those feelings are the fences that go up that keep us in our box. Because if we feel shame and guilt, rejection, and fear abandonment, then we will behave the way we're supposed to think and behave within the family and keep our role going. Her family of origin was still creating systems thoughts as well. I'd like to do a video on systems thinking, systems thoughts, and our real thoughts. Her family of origin was still creating systems thoughts that she was bad, unworthy, never good enough, and defective. And she believed the way others saw her as being true. But that's beliefs that have been imprinted and are to stay in there, so you stay in your box and in your role. And the system needs you for the equilibrium and the homeostasis and the stability of the family. We need you to stay in that box. Don't you dare come out of it. So you feel what the system creates, you think what the system creates. That's very important. These unresolved feelings and thought patterns set her up for finding her husband who fits the family system within her to a T. She married him and thus continued in pain, frustration, self-doubt, fear of abandonment, and would pendulum her life back and forth between compliance and caregiving and giving in to anger and resentment, irritation, frustration, and then we just go back and pendulum back and forth. Rather than landing in the 90-degree mark, rather than 0 to 180, because 180 degrees from sick is still sick. 90 degrees from sick is not sick. It's balanced. And so what she's been working on is, of course, her self-differentiation, so she can live at a 90-degree mark and not pendulum back and forth, which only keeps the systems going and keeps the system going. If we're doing the pendulum life, that will just maintain an unhealthy, dysfunctional system. She lived a life of triggering from those unresolved wounds as a child, thoughts that she was taught, and the current wounds inflicted by how her family of origin operates within her even presently. And it was quite amazing to hear her talk about her family of origin and how they operate now, today, is almost identical with the way it was operating when she was a child. In her recovery and healing, she began to go inward and face her fears, her beliefs, her painful childhood growing up with an alcoholic father and a narcissistic mother. Her recovery took her to going inward, so she can begin to become more aware, begin to look at feelings, which the family, of course, that's antithesis to the family. The family doesn't want to be aware and doesn't want to go inward and look at feelings. That's another thing we learn in a dysfunctional family. Oftentimes, we go outward to end a relationship with a narcissist, and then we go inward to heal. In other words, going outward is that stopping the behaviors and the things we're doing, our actions. Going inward is looking at how our feelings and our emotional system works, and the pain and feelings that we need to identify and to heal. too often, victims of narcissistic abuse go inward to manage their relationship with a narcissist and go outward and look outward regarding themselves. And what I mean by that, if I can explain, we go inward with the unhealthy relationship. Same with family of origin. We go inward to control our triggering to survive with the narcissist's onslaught of mistreatment. And we work very hard to use our empathetic skills to understand and help change the narcissist or the narcissistic family. And so we'll do all this internal work about them and about what they're doing and about perfecting them, etc. Then we go outward when dealing with ourselves. So we're doing just the opposite of what we should be doing, but I'll come back to that. We go outward when dealing with ourselves. And so when it comes to my anxiety, my pain, my trauma, my feelings of rejection, I'm not going to go inward about those because those are too painful. So I will go outward and caretake, comply, be less of a problem, be less of a burden, behave in a way to try to get love. And this soothes our anxiety and the painful triggers which upset us. But it only soothes us for a time. It's only a quick fix. We outwardly overeat, become religiously addicted, overwork, overfunction, and try harder to make others love us. But we have it reversed. Go outward with the narcissist and stop the behavior that you are doing. Go inward to heal. I suggest using a combination of inner child work, inner adult work, self-differentiation and family systems work for those who are intent on recovering from addictive narcissistic relationships. The focus on a wider system and the inner work, I believe, is the best combination for healing. So I like to zoom out so that we have a better map to operate on, and then go inward to heal and recover ourselves. There are some good authors out there. Ones that just come to mind are Marjalis Fjellstad, F-J-E-L-S-T-A-D, Margaret Paul, Jenny Brown, Roberta Gilbert, Andrea Schara, S-C-H-A-R-A, John Bradshaw, about inner child work, homecoming and inner child work. And so if you have a combination of a family systems approach and healing the inner you, I think that's the most helpful way to heal. I hope you will follow me on YouTube and hit the subscribe button so you can be one of my subscribers. And if there's a new video I put up, it gets sent to you. I hope you'll join my podcasts that are on Spotify and all the major streaming apps. I have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I put new posts up there, new quotes to encourage you. We're even thinking about doing some meditation podcasts that I think might be really healing for folks. I also would recommend you join at least the Bronze Plan on my website and join a group monthly call. That's the Silver Plan. The Bronze Plan gives you all of the exclusive content. The Silver Plan gives you all the exclusive content plus a monthly call with me, and I meet with just the Silver Plan folks where I answer questions from them. I want to thank you very much for listening today. Have a great day and be wise. Hi, my My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a relationship expert and the director of the Center for Self-Differentiation. I work with clients in my office, and I work with clients via the internet. And I produce these videos for my clients and for people who are seeking help. This video is entitled Adult Children of Narcissistic Parents. Many clients come to me and ask these questions, and maybe you've asked some of these questions yourself. Why do I struggle so much with self-acceptance? Why am I critical of myself all of the time? Why do I feel I can never measure up? Why do I feel I will never be able to measure up in my marriage, to my spouse, at my job, and whenever I make mistakes? Why do I question all of my decisions? Why do I have frozen or numb feelings, or I feel too much, and my feelings feel so very sensitive and overwhelming and too reactive? Why do I try so hard to deal with my family and my parents, my boss, my spouse, who never seem to accept me? Why don't I ever feel I'm loved unconditionally by somewhere, someplace, somebody? Why do I find and fall in love with narcissistic partners? And why do I choose friends who are more focused on themselves than they are the friendship or on me? My life seems to work, but it's not a happy life. Or it's not a life with joy and love and peace and stability that I've seen in some other people. There always seems to be conflict and arguments, and I'm always trying to be a peacemaker. Some have asked, well, Jerry, where does my codependency come from? And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Many people ask these questions also experience codependency, and I've worked with codependents for many, many years. But they might ask, well, where does my codependency come from? My parents were not alcoholic. They did not beat me every day. Our family was generally successful, and our family seemed very tight-knit growing up. So how did I obtain these struggles inside myself? Often these are some of the signs of growing up with narcissistic parents or a narcissistic parent. So you might ask, well, what do narcissistic parents look like? What do they feel like? What do they behave like? Well, first of all, shame is at the core of narcissism. Low self-esteem, inadequacy, and having an idealized self. You might say, but narcissists seem the opposite of all those things. They seem to have very, very high view of themselves, very high self-esteem, over-adequate, and they actually live their ideal life. Yes, it seems like that. But remember, someone does not need to be a narcissist if they feel adequate and self-accepting and have a strong sense of self. If you have those three things, you have no need to be narcissistic or act or behave narcissistically. But they don't have those components. So they project these problems onto others. Their friends, co-workers, spouses, and certainly their children. But they do it in a very self-absorbed way. Now, there are some parents that have true narcissistic personality disorder. Some parents just have many traits of narcissism. So narcissism is on a continuum. It's on a line. Narcissistic personality disorder all the way down to a few narcissistic traits. But regardless of where someone's at on that spectrum, there are effects on the children. And the effects are very similar. So what do narcissistic parents look like? These are not all of the traits of narcissistic parents, but here are some important ones. A narcissistic parent is extremely shameless on the outside and exquisitely shame-sensitive on the inside, which is the trigger for all their feelings of superiority, belittling, contempt, anger, many times abuse of others, and particularly of their own children. A narcissistic parent has a fantasy self. It is an idealized self, which keeps reaffirming their superiority to others and to their children. Now, it's not a real self, it's a fantasy self, and they just feel superior to everyone and to their children. Children never measure up and can never be like their parents because their parents, or the narcissistic parent, is superior. The narcissistic parent demonstrates envy and contempt of others and the world. They are always judging and evaluating themselves in contrast to others. The narcissistic parent has a sense of entitlement, and when something doesn't happen just as they feel it should happen, they deep down feel powerless, and it hits their deep core of shame. Then they can have the internal rage of a 1-year-old, only now they're an adult. So it becomes the internal rage of an adult. But it feels very immature, like a 1-year-old, when the narcissist has their shame triggered and has the world as they planned it not go as it should be planned. It's like the narcissistic mother who is planning the wedding for her daughter. The wedding is completely for the mother, not for the daughter. The mother has very little empathy or feels for her daughter at all. And then something goes wrong with the planning, and the mother is completely furious, outraged, upset, as though it was her wedding that's being ruined. It's her daughter's. It's not her wedding that's being ruined, but it's all very personal for her because things didn't go as planned. So now her perfect view of what was supposed to happen is not going to happen, and now she feels contempt. She feels she's hooked into her shame. Now she can't talk about all that, but it just comes out in anger, resentment, and often people get punished for making mistakes in those kind of situations. While the daughter bride is sitting off by herself, almost not involved whatsoever in the wedding. Because mom, the narcissistic parent, it's all about her. It's totally all about her. The daughter just plays a supporting role in the narcissistic parent's plans and in their wedding. The narcissistic parent is not empathetic. They don't recognize the feelings of others. They tend to use others without regard to their feelings. For example, the mother, and just using this example, it could be father, son, it could be but just mother, daughter, and a wedding, an event such as that. And the mother decides, well, we're going to use this caterer because they're the best caterer in the whole tri-state region. And so we want to be seen as superior and better, so we're going to use this caterer. And heaven forbid that caterer better do it right. That's all I've got to say, or mom will be a mess. Now, maybe the daughter wants something different for catering, but that doesn't matter. Her feelings, wants, and desires don't matter at all. Dear, honey, we have to have it this way. It's just the way it has to be. That's the narcissistic parent coming out. And if the daughter would say, no, mom, I don't want to do that, mom would be crushed. Her ego, shame would be touched. Shame would be triggered. Ego would be felt insecure. And mom would flip out until the daughter came around to mom's side. They just don't understand why people cannot do what they want and need, the narcissistic parent. They are oblivious to the feelings of others. So what do we do as children of narcissistic parents? How do we heal? How do we function? How do we grow up? How do we affirm our sense of self when for so many years it was never even considered in the formula? Number one, begin your process of discarding your own needs for the narcissistic parent. Begin to heal and deal with your own dependency needs from long ago, so the narcissistic parent cannot trigger those. Believe it or not, it is possible. Your neediness keeps you enmeshed and locked into the narcissist. If we're still enmeshed with a narcissistic parent, we do not possess a strong sense of self yet. We have not grown up yet. This work of self-differentiation is critical for adult children of narcissistic parents. This is the process of letting them go emotionally versus physically. So many want to let go of them physically. Well, we lived in Connecticut, but I'm going to move out to California so I don't have to deal with my narcissistic mom and dad. Well, the problem is the narcissistic mom and dad go with you internally out to California. We want to let them go emotionally. We don't necessarily have to move 2,000 miles away. 2, setting boundaries and setting limits. Begin to learn what is your abstinence from the narcissistic parent. What are your limits? You have the right to choose them. They aren't going to change, so we must. So as an adult, what are my limits for their behavior? And what do I need to do either to pull back or to set up fences so I begin to deal with boundaries with the narcissistic parent? 3, not every parent who shows traits of narcissistic personality disorder are fully narcissistic personality disorder parents. There are softer versions, such as the self-focused parent, the oblivious parent, the non-empathetic parent, or maybe a parent who is all 3 of those, but maybe not fully NPD. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to get needs met from someone who does not even acknowledge you have needs or feelings. We must stop trying to get needs met from them. And that's the work that I do with clients, and help them to have and reduce those needs for the narcissistic parent. Number 4, working on taking care of your own needs. Begin to live as though the narcissistic parent doesn't exist or need to exist. It doesn't mean you don't want them to not exist, but to live as though they don't. We don't wish them ill. We don't want them to become unimportant and non-significant to us emotionally. Doing an intentional funeral for them, which I have another video on, I might suggest. Doing work to let them go internally, doing the grief work of letting go of a narcissistic parent, and doing the grief work for losing the parent we never had and always wanted. And then we stop orbiting the narcissistic parent. The parent becomes the sun that we orbit around. And we've done that all of our lives. How do we move out of that orbit? Number 5, if you have to deal with the narcissistic parent or work out some issues with a narcissistic parent, you may want to consider using a third party. Narcissistic parents don't like looking bad to others. They will often behave better with an audience, a therapist, a coach, a pastor, a mediator, a lawyer. They often will behave better because they don't want to be viewed as not behaving well in front of other people. So that might be a protection for you to use third parties. 6, stay away from triggers for them. Don't shame them. Now that's almost impossible because just saying hi to a narcissistic parent can trigger shame because they're exquisitely sensitive to shame. Working out your childhood hurts, past injustices, etc., just don't work with the narcissistic parent. Number one, they're not trying to hear it. Number two, they're not wanting to sit down and just have a heart-to-heart talk with you. Because it's just by even saying, hey, Mom, our family wasn't perfect growing up. That's all you need to say, and you've hit their shame. Now, all you've said is, and you've said all families are not perfect growing up. No family is perfect. But that doesn't matter. You said our family was not perfect, so therefore you're accusing me of something and not being adequate, not being the best parent, and then they go into their shame core. Again, work out those things with a professional. If you have hurts from the past and injustices, work that out with a professional, therapist, coach, pastor. Remember, being reasonable often does not work with a narcissistic parent. Being reasonable requires empathy, and they have little. So when you're expecting reasonableness, narcissistic parents are not the way to go. 7, narcissistic parents ignite anger and resentment and hurt, and resolve these feelings inside yourself. Though it's very frustrating when someone works with you, talks with you, just like the daughter at the wedding and the mother who it was all for her and not for the daughter. And then later the daughter feels resentful and anger that she didn't get to plan her wedding and do the wedding she wanted. She had to do exactly what her mom wanted. Well, then she's left with anger, resentment, and hurt. Don't work that out with a narcissistic mom. Work that out with a professional, because you're probably not going to get very far working it out with mom. 8, heal your destructive inner parent and your inner narcissistic parent. Oftentimes, we take on what we've learned from our parents growing up, and then we become that kind of a parent to ourselves. Often we've been criticized and our weakness is attacked by the narcissistic parent. This becomes internalized, and we're now very surgical in how we can turn ourselves on ourselves. And people turn themselves on themselves all the time. We don't realize that everyone has weaknesses, including us. And it's okay to have weaknesses. It's okay to make mistakes. Who doesn't? However, in a narcissistic home, that's not okay. Criticism they'll be always scanning in a narcissistic family. Scanning to see what can be criticized and what's not perfect and what's not right and what's not living up to the parents' acceptability standards. We all make mistakes, and we do not deserve to be shamed or rejected because we have made mistakes or are not perfect, or we're not superior, or we're not stellar. Heal your own shame and guilt triggers. Work on getting rid of that inner narcissistic parent that is destructive to us. 9, begin to learn not to accept the blame or criticism of others or narcissists in particular. All assessments and observations must go through my evaluator. I am an adult now. They don't go in directly without being processed. I must assess them first. When someone compliments me, I say thank you, but then I must assess whether that compliment is something I can relish in and enjoy. The same is true for the flip side of the coin. When someone criticizes me, I can say, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it doesn't go in and become a part of me until I evaluate it first. Then I take it as, maybe that's something I need to work on. But it doesn't go in directly. And used to, as a very strong and healthy codependent, if you said there was something wrong with me, then there was something wrong with me. Well, now I go, no, I listen to people who say there's something wrong with me, or a problem, or a mistake. I evaluate it, and then decide as an adult whether that applies, whether I care, or whether I should change something. That's all for me to decide. 10, don't interact with a narcissistic parent when you are feeling stressed, or feeling vulnerable, or feeling needy. Those are not the times to be interacting with the narcissistic parent. 11, as I have said before, don't have heart-to-heart talks with them. You will only be sharing more vulnerability, which will be only used against you in the future. I'm not saying you can't be yourself. I'm not saying you can't be authentic or who you are, but you need to be ready for who you are. You need to be ready for, if I share with someone who's a narcissist some weakness or failure for me, I do that after I'm ready to not care about how they feel about that. In other words, if I say to someone, I wasn't the best student in high school, or I wasn't the top swimmer in high school, or whatever, if you say that to a narcissist, they'll have all kinds of criticism or excuses or contempt or whatever. I need to be in a position where I really don't care whether you have criticism, contempt. It just bounces off. It doesn't matter. And so that's when I can be more open and honest with the narcissist. If you're not ready for that, then don't do that yet, because it's going to come your way. That negative is going to come your way. 12, change your emotional field, not the narcissist. Many times we're always trying to, well, if mom would only change, if dad would only change, if my sister would only change, if they would only change, and maybe if I do this, then they would change. Maybe if they got this help there. We're hooked into, if we get them fixed, then I'll feel better. And I think that's a problem. We have to change our emotional field. I've got a couple that I've worked with in the past, and they came to me and were getting a divorce, and one parent is narcissistic and one parent is not. And the narcissistic parent is just horrible to the ex, to the estranged ex, and to the kids at times. And the wife was always engaged in trying to get her husband to stop and to change. Now her work is to focus on changing her and her emotional field and her emotional field with her kids, rather than fixing her husband or ex-husband, because that's not going to work well. We have to fix our own selves, and that will also be a real help to the kids, even though they have to deal with a narcissistic father from here on out. That's a father they're going to have to deal with. So they need as healthy a mother as possible. And that's what she's working on. 13, heal your narcissistic tractor beam. As an adult child of narcissistic parents, you attract narcissists in your life. Heal you, and this will stop. The tractor beam will stop. 14, self-differentiation work is the key to recovery for the adult child of narcissistic parents. I would really recommend you get into some books and work on self-differentiation. I have some resources for you if you'd like to write to me. If you would like to learn more about healing yourself, I'm a family systems expert, and I would be happy to send you some resources. I also see clients via Skype and FaceTime in the English-speaking world, or wherever you're at if you speak English, and on the phone and in my office. Contact me for an appointment. My contact information is on the screen. Please join our YouTube channel. I did want to add a couple of resources that might be of help to you. A favorite book of mine is Trapped in the Mirror by Elon Golem, and I really think that this is an excellent book. You might find it. You can find it on Amazon. It is Trapped in the Mirror, Adult Children of Narcissistics in Their Struggle for Self. A second book, and by the way, there are many good books out there, but here's a second book I like. Why Is It Always About You? The 7 Deadly Sins of Narcissism, and I really think it's a good resource. There's Disarming the Narcissist. There's a number of books out there, and you can find them. They're available. I would recommend you learning more about the illness of narcissism so that you can function in a more stable and healthy way. Again, thanks for watching today. Have a good day. Hey, hi everyone. My name is Jerry Wise, and I've been a life and relationship coach for many years, helping people to learn to self-differentiate and dealing with growing up in dysfunctional families. This video is entitled The Trauma of Parentification. I hope that you'll subscribe, like, comment, and join to support making more videos. In joining, you may need to use your browser and not just your phone app. I've found people have struggles if they're not using their browser to be able to join. So not all the apps and not everything on your phone has everything YouTube has. So you may have to use your browser for that. Certainly, we all know children need to be loved, protected, cared for, and have adults take them seriously. But in many families, that doesn't happen. And in many families, they have no choice but to become parentified and take over some non-child roles in the family. And that can be traumatizing. I have many clients who have experienced parentification. Parentification occurs when a child takes on adult tasks, and it can either be emotional or instrumental. For example, emotional would be carrying the emotional load of a parent who's not functioning very well, such as an alcoholic father, a codependent mother, and we comfort the codependent mother and are their therapist and support system for that. That's a parentification of the child because we're not there to take care of our parents when we're children. We can be a comforter, or we can be a scapegoat, or a whipping boy is another way in which we use parentification in the family, and another way in which we are parentified. We must take on a role beyond our just being a child in the family. Parentification is defined as the phenomenon where children take caregiving responsibilities and assume such a role for their parents, siblings, or other family members at the expense of their own needs and their own developmental childhood needs. That's when we are parentified. And so you might ask, well, don't children have to maybe do chores and do, some things? Well, child appropriate and child developmental growth tasks are okay. I mean, certainly kids may need to make their bed, maybe they can even learn to do dishes. But parentification is when you are a child and you're now becoming a parent or an adult. And so it's not age-appropriate responsibilities. So why is it so destructive and traumatizing to be parentified? We lose our childhood when we are parentified as children. We become a parent or an adult when we are still a child. We're parentified and traumatized when we take on inappropriate or high-level adult responsibilities combined with unrealistic expectations. Such as, I had a client who was talking about she was 7 years old. Her mom had basically abandoned the family, living with another guy. Her father was still there. He was under-functioning. Very dysfunctional family. She's 7, her sister's 5. She now becomes the parent for the 5-year-old. Inappropriate, high-level adult responsibilities taking care of this 5-year-old child, combined with unrealistic expectations. She needs to get the child up to go to school. She needs to bathe them and cook for them and do all of that. And then she ends up with being traumatized also by, she doesn't know what to do. She knows if you put bacon in the microwave, it cooks. But she doesn't know the plate gets hot too. So she goes in to pull the plate out, burns her fingers, drops on her foot. Now she has a scar on her foot as an adult because she's a 7-year-old trying to do bacon for a 5-year-old. Just not age appropriate. Kids can certainly learn how to use a microwave, but they need help. They need instruction. And they don't need to be asked to do it when they're young. We are traumatized by parentification because it depletes our emotional and physical resources as children. And it constitutes a role reversal or a role corruption. Our role in our family to be just a child gets corrupted or reversed. It also becomes the seedbed of the imposter syndrome. And we become who we are not. And we don't feel real, or we don't feel ourselves. There's some excellent research that adults who are parentified will struggle heavily with the imposter syndrome. I'm a fake. If you really knew who I was, if you really knew me, you maybe wouldn't like me. I don't even know me, and I can't be myself. That kind of imposter syndrome happens with ACOAs, ACONs, adult children of narcissists, and it's certainly when we are parentified, then we don't learn ourselves and to be ourselves. Parentification is really a form of emotional abuse and exploitation that stems from neglect. The parents have checked out, and now we are left with the responsibilities. Or they've checked out of some of their own adult responsibilities, or their own taking care of their own emotional, psychological needs. And they put that on us, and then we are abused and exploited through that neglect. And it certainly makes overfunctioning as an imprinted way of life. My needs are banished. And everyone borrows self from me, though I may only be 7 years old. I may only be 10 years old. I may only be 5 years old, or 13 years old. And everyone borrows a self from me. And I haven't even developed myself yet. And our own selves, we're traumatized because our own selves are defined for us, not by us. And so this is very painful and traumatizing. So we spend the rest of our lives having ourselves defined by other people and not by us. And I work with people to help them learn to have a self defined by themselves and not by everybody else. And our identity as children and then as adults depends on our ability to suppress our needs when we're a parentified child. We learn to be quiet, voiceless, and without demands. This creates low self-worth, low self-esteem, and becomes very traumatizing that way. Parentification is a boundaryless experience. In other words, nobody has any boundaries. Children do adult things, adults do children things, or act like children, and children do adult things. There's no boundaries. There's no, this is you being valued, this is me being valued, this is appropriate respect, this is all it's all mushed up. And the boundaries are just overlapped. We all share this big super self of the family. And your role is to be parentified. Or your role is to carry the family, or carry a part of the family which should not be carried by you. And our own self-care is accompanied by intense feelings of guilt and shame. So taking care of yourself is equated with guilt and shame, or connected to guilt and shame. Certainly we never learn to say no, because you can't say no. If I'm 7-year-old and I don't take care of my 5-year-old sister, who else is going to do it? Can I say no to anybody? There's nobody I can say no to. In fact, I just better do it because she's not going to thrive and survive. And we never learn how to say no. And I do like the book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. I believe it's by Manuel Smith. I've read it a couple times. It's a great book. It really helped me in the beginning. When I say no, I feel guilty. We then are traumatized by being imprinted with this belief: if I'm a good girl or a good boy, if I'm compliant, if I'm obedient, and quiet, and without my own needs, then I will be loved, approved of, cared about, and not abused. That's an imprinting message that we learn from parentification. Then if we're in a narcissistic family, we learn if I'm a good girl or a good boy, compliant, obedient, quiet, without your own needs, you'll still be ignored, abused, and demeaned in a narcissistic family. So it becomes a double down problem in the family, especially for narcissistic families. And I would recommend watching my last video, which is the 22 rules of a dysfunctional narcissistic family. When we are parentified, we end up being human doings and not human beings. And you've probably heard that phrase before, but people really do talk about, I know I'm a human doer rather than a human being. As parentified children, we are also traumatized by being given way too much information than we can handle, while being given less information that we need. We have too much adult information, and we're not given information that would help us develop as children, and knowledge of things, how to cook bacon in a microwave. But yet I'm given way too much information about my parents' marriage, sex life, emotional functioning, which I can't handle, but not enough information to know how to cook the bacon in the microwave. So given too much information and too little than what we need. And many times we will suffer from what I just mentioned and call the double down syndrome, in which we spend our lives using the strategy of try harder, do more, try harder and harder, versus the strategy of letting go and detachment. We get stuck in the pattern of trying harder, rather than maybe this is a situation in which we need to let go, not try harder. And that this gets us into the enabling problem. And I talked with a client, I remember, I think it was a year ago, and she was from, I don't know what state or what country even, and she was still having a 43-year-old son live with her, and she's going, isn't my job to create in him greater confidence so that he can function as an adult, and isn't it that my job as a parent? Come to find out, she was a parentified child. Now she has a child who's 43 years old, who can work, living with her in a one-bedroom, apartment, and supporting him, because we just keep trying harder to do what they need to be doing, rather than having boundaries of, no, this is his task. Now, it's not your task as a parent. Your parenting ended at 18. Now you're a mother and an adult. And so we end up being brothers and sisters as adults, not parent and child. That needs to become more even once 18 hits, or some age near that, in which you're an adult, I'm an adult, I no longer can parent you out of these problems. And so he had spent a long time living with her, and he's still, 43 and not functioning and thriving. And we began to deal with that. And it was very helpful for her to think in new ways about parenting and about mothering and about adulting and being mature, both for herself and for her adult child. And certainly parentification can affect our emotional regulation and our physical health. It can cause us to be sick. It can cause us to be emotionally sick when we are parentified. And in fact, sometimes parentified children will be sick as a symptom to voice the pain of the family because nobody's dealing with the pain of the family and it's on the parentified child. That can be a whole nother video in and of itself. As parentified children, we're more likely to become entangled in abusive relationships, victimhood, and martyrdom as adults. And another way it traumatizes us is it creates the foundation for trauma bonding and insecure attachment styles. We find we are bonded through trauma in relationships and have a very insecure attachment style. We want to attach, but we're very insecure. We fear abandonment. We get enmeshed. We're craving love that we never got. And we just hang on and try harder. And then that bond in an unhealthy relationship just continues forward. This toxic, codependent dynamic between parent and child ends up being the basis for our trauma bonding relationships in adulthood with abusers, narcissists, self-absorbed, and low empathy partners. We end up craving intimacy and actually become addicted to intimacy or love because we haven't had it, and we become enmeshed, and then we fear abandonment. Parentification creates sibling relationships difficulties and complicates sibling relationships in adulthood because they see you as the parentified child even as an adult. And so you're supposed to do more to help mom and dad, not us. That's your job. And then when parents age, we can also be drawn into that as well. Well, who takes care of the aging parent? It's the parentified child that is supposed to do that. So they're fine with their underfunctioning. They want you to overfunction. And sorting that out, I would advise getting some help for that. If you find yourself now as an adult with aging parents, you want to be very careful about your overfunctioning, or you'll get drawn into the same childhood pattern you had before. Parentified children also tend to develop a delay in trauma awareness. So they don't even realize they're being traumatized now because they don't have that trauma awareness. It's been so normal. The upside of parentified children as adults is that we are survivors, resilient, and can be self-contained. We learn it's safer to depend on myself than anyone else. So we have that kind of resilience and that kind of strength. We also have the other sides in which we don't know how to get our needs met, may have a hard time having healthy relationships, but we have some upsides. And with almost all things, there are upsides and downsides. Negative things can have upsides. Positive things can have downsides. I would recommend Joanna's Pantazi, Pantazi, her article on parentification and trauma. It's online if you want to learn more. I'll put the reference below in the description. And all of these struggles that I've mentioned are helped by coaching, therapy, books, reading, bibliotherapy, reading, 12-step meetings, support groups. There are, church groups that have great meeting groups for those who grew up in dysfunctional families. And the good news is you don't have to stay stuck in these patterns. That's the good news. There is recovery for you. For the therapists out there, I would have you read Burdened Children, Theory, Research, and Treatment of Parentification. And I would suggest you read Lost Childhoods, The Plight of the Parentified Child. For lay readers, and for those of you who are not therapists, you might want to read Children of the Self-Absorbed, a grown-up's guide to getting over narcissistic parents. And you might want to read Self-Care for adult children of emotionally immature parents. Honor your emotions, nurture yourself, and live with confidence. That's kind of a long title to that book, but I would recommend that. I hope you will just subscribe, join, like, and comment on this video. I hope you'll pass it on to your social network. I want to thank you for joining me today. Have a great day and be wise. Hey, hi everyone. This is Jerry Wise, a life and relationship coach. And thank you for joining Jerry Wise Relationship Systems YouTube channel. I hope you'll subscribe and also join the membership, paid membership of $1.99 a month. I hope you'll click join and join us for that. Help support the videos, the free videos that you get. We are continuing with our principles of self-differentiation, and this is number 11, I believe. I am happily joined by Yitz Goldberg, who also works here and sees clients. And I thought I would have Yitz say hello and introduce the principle.
Hey everyone, good to be here again. Today we will be talking about principle number 11, which is learning to make peace with differences in yourself and others. And to me, this principle is about being okay, not only with similarities with others, but also with differences. And very often we are okay when it comes to other people and relationships when things are very similar and we have things in common, and we tend to not be okay or even lose ourselves when there are differences, and when especially when those differences are very, very clear and out there.
I made a note. Accepting differences is a means to accepting self. And certainly other people, we cannot control other people's thoughts, feelings, beliefs. And if we accept the differences between us, we then are able to more differentiate or detach ourselves by accepting their differences. And we begin to see more clearly where we end and others begin when we do that. So finding self with accepting differences is a way for us to find that self.
Yeah, and as humans, we have a lot of things that are common, right? Just from being human. And I even feel like that our culture expects us to find things that we are similar in, and try to
Mm-hmm.
find more similarities than being okay with differences. And there's a certain point of this work is learning to find those differences and be okay with them, because those differences are part of being human. It doesn't make you unhuman because you're different. That it's on the same
Right.
it's on the same coin.
It's
It's just two
equivalent.
sides of the coin.
Right. And we have sameness and we have differentness. And in family systems theory, we have togetherness and we have separateness. We have individuation and we have connectedness. And we hold those two forces together. And that's a part of the human experience. It's actually a part of the whole biological experience of life, holding togetherness and separateness together. That's how life works, I believe, even on a cellular level, or even smaller than that.
And Edwin Friedman talks about that in his book Failure of Nerve. He goes deeper into that example of cells and how they are differentiated, and when they connect together, that's what creates cancer.
Right. When there's too much togetherness or fusion, then you have disease. And when you have a healthy balance of togetherness and separateness, you have a healthy life, healthy functioning life. When you have too much distance or separateness and no togetherness, then you don't have life. I think for many people who are in recovery, for many people who grew up in dysfunctional families and have struggled in their codependency or other kinds of problems that they've experienced. I know for me as a codependent, my existence was based on their beliefs and our sameness. And my existence was based on that. That's how important the sameness of beliefs and also feeling states, having mirrored feeling states was so important. I feel like you, you feel like me. I think like you think like me. And so differences were not valued. I think in my own religious past, there was a very strong pressure for sameness. We all should think and feel the same way. We should have a group think, and differences were not very well accepted. If you did not hold the party line or hold the company line, and that there was a great value in sameness. And even the feeling that my existence is based on same beliefs, same feelings, sameness, thinking alike, feeling alike, and not valuing the differences. And that if I'm me, if I'm self-aware, self-defined, and self-regulated, I'm going to be different from other people. And that's a good thing. And that's a good thing. Like you say, it's the human thing.
And if someone else is going to be self, they will be different for me.
Right. Right. They will be different. And we can have difference while also being connected. Though for many people, it is hard for them to connect with someone who is different from them. Because again, our existence or my existence was based on sameness. So if you're not same like me,
then I need to exclude you, or we're not going to gel. You know, we're not going to connect because we're not the same. And that is a problem, and can be a problem, because we are unique. We may have some common beliefs, we may even have some common feelings about different things, but I am still going to be a unique individual, and I won't believe everything everybody believes. I won't feel the way everybody feels. And can we still be connected? But
Yeah.
accepting those differences is, I think, a part of maturity and growing up. That not everybody is me.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for when I was younger.
And differences have it has many forms. Differences. It could be strengths that you or the other have. It could be weaknesses or limitations that you or the other have. And I can go even deeper with this, that accepting differences means accepting others' strengths without feeling inferior. Meaning you don't feel less than the other person just because they have a strength, or you don't feel more than the other person just because you have a certain strength. You don't feel guilt for having a strength because you're allowed to have that strength, and you're allowed to be different than the other person in this way. And it's understanding that when a lot of times feeling those feelings is because of the differences between ourselves and the other person. And very often when we feel those feelings, it's because we're not understanding this principle. We're not remembering this principle that
Right.
their difference means nothing about my difference, and my difference means nothing about their difference.
Right. Well, and I think that's where the therapeutic value comes in, and how it can be helpful, in that they can be different and think different. I can be me and think differently, so that if they have a negative view of me, I'm letting them have that negative view of me, but I'm not absorbing it. And we don't have to think alike. I don't think that I am bad or stupid or worthless, or, you may think that. That's your thoughts. And so it gives me a greater amount of detachment and neutrality, because I accept that their differences can be ludicrous. I mean, they can be ridiculous, in dysfunctional families. Um, and those are their beliefs for whatever reasons, and there could be many reasons, but they're not my beliefs. And so they are different from me. And so I don't have to absorb that. I can observe those differences rather than absorb them.
Yeah.
And the health of, I am not you and you are not me, notion, which I think is a helpful thing to be aware of, a helpful notion to have with other people. I'm not you and you're not me. And we don't have to be, that's even because my beliefs early on in my life were, we have to be, we just do. And you have to like me, you have to agree with me. I shouldn't talk or be with people who don't think and feel the same way I do. And so we surround ourselves, particularly as codependents, with people who we can more mesh with, and we see a lot more sameness. But then that causes problems, because then that stifles the real self. And then we hide, then we keep secrets, then we lie, then we have those kinds of difficulties with that sameness that's needed, for us all
Yeah.
to feel comfortable. And differences are a big are a big thing. And I think that's a part of maturing and getting older, that you begin to realize, people think differently than I do, and they will. Um, and is that okay? And is okay to think what I think and believe what I believe, and principles, values, morals, beliefs. Uh, is it okay that I am not the same?
Yeah.
And
I've learned on myself from the work I've done on myself that over functioning or being a hero is not respecting other people's differences. Um, when you try to change someone, you are not respecting the difference between you and the other person. When you're trying to fix them, when you're trying to fix a situation, it is not honoring this simple principle of there are differences, and it's okay that there are differences, and can you relate despite the differences, and what is required from you, what type of self-regulation do you need to do, or self-definition do you need to do, um, when this difference exists.
right. And I think that's where, if someone thinks harshly, meanly, badly about me, if I accept their differences, it doesn't mean I will stay in for the abuse. It means I now have to make choices as to how I'm going to relate to this person. I can't change them, and probably have tried to for for a long time, but I can't change them. Now, what do I do to position myself with them that has the least toxic effect? So I'm accepting their differences, but I'm adjusting myself to that reality. And then we care for ourselves more. There's better self-protection, there's better self-choices when we accept the differences of others. Um, I was also going to mention that the not only are there differences in beliefs, but there can be differences in how we react and feel toward things. If you really want to get a reaction from someone, feel differently than they feel. I remember, like with mom always wanted me to come and visit her more often at the nursing home. Well, I visited about once a week, spend a couple hours. I would do that. And then occasionally I would do things during the week if she needed to go to doctor's appointment or different things like that. But that was about the pace that I could do, and that I was working and so when someone would come to me and say, I was talking to your mom and she sure would like to see you more, and I can just tell she wants you to come visit her more frequently. I go, oh, really? Yeah, she's mentioned that to me before. Well, don't you feel like you should honor your father and mother, and you should go and visit her more? And I go, no, I feel pretty neutral about that. Now, what reaction are you going to get from somebody else? Because their guilt or their neediness or their obligations or their beliefs are quite different. That if my sainted mother tells them that she'd like to see me more often, they feel I should be empathetic or compassionate more with mom and go and see her more, and that my compassion and my feelings would be different. I'm much more neutral about that. They don't like my neutrality. They see that as a bad thing. And now I'm different in terms of my neutrality. That's just about the frequency that I would like to do, and that feels comfortable for me, and I want to stay connected with my mother, but I don't want to talk to her for 3 hours every day and go visit her. I'm not going to do that. I also knew she had friends, she had she had calls, and and then there were other residents, and I mean, it wasn't like she was just totally all alone. But even if she was totally all alone, if I'm working and if it's hard, I can't just quit my job and go take care of mom's emotional needs. I just can't do it. But to be okay with that is having a difference of emotional response that people may not like and may not accept.
Yeah, and Jerry, you've mentioned the word reactive, and reactivity in a way is lack of being okay with difference. Because if you are okay with difference, then why would you be reactive to the other person?
Right?
It's exactly what you're saying right now. I'm okay with being neutral, so I don't need to be reactive.
I don't have to go, well, I wish mom wouldn't talk to you about what I should be doing to visit her. Why is she telling you? You know, I could get reactive, but if I'm okay with my position or I have neutrality, I don't have to react to them and say, you know, thank you for caring about mom, but I'll be fine doing what I'm doing right now. You know, mom will be fine. She may not have everything she wants, but I don't have everything I want either. I mean, that's kind of life. I mean, I wish I could have everything I wanted. You know, that'd be great. But I think you're right, accepting those differences and being okay then reduces the reactivity. I like that point where we talked about others can believe what they choose, but I then must act accordingly. And oftentimes we don't want to act accordingly. We don't like the options of acting accordingly because that may mean boundaries. It may mean loss of part of the relationship. It may mean loss of finances. It may mean a lot of things. If we accept what they believe and where they're at, just like if someone believes I'm greedy and cannot manage money, and then a parent decides to give me less inheritance because I would misuse it. Well, I may not be greedy and I may not have financial irresponsibility. But if that's what they believe, that could have an impact on how it affects me. And so do I spend the rest of my life trying to prove to them that I'm deserving of that inheritance? Well, if you decided I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to prove that and change them, well, that could mean a loss of inheritance because of their beliefs. So, but how am I going to act accordingly to their beliefs? And I found one of the best ways to change a belief in others is to not be reactive to it. That's it. It's because oftentimes it's counterintuitive. It surprises them. In other words, them having that belief is totally on them to have. And they have to take responsibility for that belief. I'm not going to do things in a reactive way or whatever to enhance that belief or try to defend myself out of that belief. Because oftentimes defending means you're probably already lost. Anyway, so why do I want to defend myself? Oftentimes they've come to those beliefs for other reasons. And you know, me defending myself doesn't fix it. No, I'm not financially responsible. Let me show you all of my past finances. No, I'm not greedy. Let me show you all the ways in which I've given to other people. You know, how much would that truly work? Because often the belief has come from an irrational position or an emotional position or a systems role position that it's not about the logic of it. So me giving you all the financial documents is probably not going to change anything about what you believe about me. And so I want to accept. However, accepting that's what they believe could possibly do more to dislodge them from that position in a systems way. But we don't we don't do that to change them, but I'm just saying that can be a secondary or a byproduct.
Right.
That's an
important point, because this is not about forcing differences. It's about respecting differences, and forcing differences is not respecting differences.
Right. And even if those differences are illogical or irrational, we can still respect them, but then we have to act or choose accordingly how we're going to interact with them. But that's called being an adult. I mean, that's what we do. I can't change others' irrational beliefs. So I respect that. Those are their beliefs. I don't believe them to be true at all, but that's my belief. Now, what am I going to do? And, and so when the parent decides, okay, I want you all to know what's in my will, and Jerry, I'm not going to leave anything for you. We're all going to meet Saturday at the lawyer's office. I can decide whether I'm going to go or not. If there's nothing for me or nothing of, why am I going to go? Just to feel, or to be shamed or to be whatever. I mean, I can decide, well, if that's what you believe, then that's what you believe, and I don't see any good reason for me to be there. You're free to do with your money what you want to do. But I don't have to go, or I don't have to go to try to beg you to give me some inheritance, or, I'm not going to do that. And so I can decide that in a calm, matter-of-fact way.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that the feeling of difference, sometimes it could feel very liberating, and sometimes it could be the scariest feeling on earth. And that's important to remember, because these both of these emotions will come up the more you differentiate and the more you find differences. And there are certain moments that the differences become scary, because you understand you are truly alone. Not that you weren't alone up until now. You were alone.
Right,
you just didn't know
you
you're
just
alone.
didn't know it. Right.
And when you experience the difference, when you really see where you end and the other person starts, it could get scary.
It's profound. Right. And you're right. I am the person that I have, and what boils down to is me. And that's why I like Margaret Paul's work on inner bonding, where we're bonding with ourselves and how important that is. But we really must do that, because really the only person you have is you. And that becomes more aware in a very stark way when you start thinking about these differences, because this is my belief, and I'm not going to get a vote of a majority positive for what I'm believing or what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling.
And I don't need that vote.
And
that's where the real difference comes in. I don't need that vote.
And that does show how much you are standing alone. And I think there are other people who would be supportive of us, and there are other people we connect with, but we do have to learn to stand alone. And I think that's a part of maturity, is learning to stand alone. Well, we have come to the end of our time. Any other comments you want to make, Yitz, about this?
This was a good conversation. I really enjoyed these series. We could seriously go on forever, and we might go on forever. Who knows?
Right.
But this principle is the essence of self-differentiation work. It's learning to be different. It's learning to respect differences, and it's being okay with the tension of difference. So this is the work.
Good words. This is principle 11, like making peace with differences. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, join our membership for a paid $1.99 membership under join. I want to thank Yitz Goldberg for joining me today on doing this series, also on principles of self-differentiation. We're going to continue on with this. And if you'd like to work with either one of us, you can check with the website that's listed below, and you can make an appointment. You can go to the website and see things that will be coming up. I appreciate you all of you being there and listening to us today. Thank you, Yitz.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully see you in the next principle.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day and be wise.